All right, what's up, Bulldogs? I am very happy today. I've been waiting for this for a long time. As you guys have heard me say many, many times, Stephen Pressfield is one of my favorite authors. His book, The War of Art, really changed my life. A lot of my outlook in life. I recommend that book all the time. And so I have Stephen here to talk with us, and also to talk about his new book here, The Man at Arms, which he sent me an advanced copy. Really good book. Read through this on my plane trip to Tampa, and it was really good. I couldn't put it down. There were some parts in this book where it's just I was ready to stop. And I was like, no, I had to sit down in the terminal and finish reading because I needed to know what was going to happen. I won't reveal the details, but welcome, Stephen.
Hey, thank you, John. Thanks very much for having me. It's great to be with you in Pacific Beach.
Yeah. Glad to have you here. It feels like unreal because so many times I think I've listened to the audio version of The War of Art probably like a good 20 times.
Wow.
Just I do a lot of running, and I listen to it
Uh-huh.
so many times. And yeah, it's kind of funny because I always expect, like, in my mind, your voice is the narrator's voice.
Great. Well, that's good to know. Great. I'm glad it's helped.
Yeah, it's been a really, really, really helpful book. So, I guess the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is what was the inspiration for writing that book. I think that's because, like, what was your initial audience, like your target for writing that book, and why did you write it?
Ah, I when you're a professional writer,
Mhm.
your friends always come to you and they say, "Oh, I've got a book in me, or I've got a novel in me, but I just can't get started on it, or whatever, or tell me how do I write a book?" So I would sit up with friends of mine till like 2 in the morning, trying to kind of psych them up to write their book, right? And I would tell them about this concept of resistance with a capital R. That the first thing they have to be aware of is that there's a devil inside them that's going to try to sabotage them with procrastination and fear and self-doubt and all that sort of thing. And I would psych them up to try to write the book and their book. And of course, nobody ever did it. Nobody ever did it. Except one guy did it. He actually wrote a really good book and it didn't even get published, which was sort of a tragedy. But in any event, after doing this like maybe 7 or 8 times, I
Yeah.
just got so tired of it, repeating myself, that I just said, let me just write this down on paper. And then when somebody, asks me again, I'll just say, here, read this. And
Right.
so that was, so I just had seriously, I mean, I'm not kidding, really. I had like a break of about 3 months, 3 or 4 months between projects. So I just kind of sat down and banged it out. And that's how it happened. And I never really thought that many people would respond to it. I mean, in many ways, I thought I must be the only one that experiences resistance. I can't believe everybody else does. But to my amazement, everybody else does.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like, when I tell people about that book, I'm like, that the reason why that book was so impactful to me was because I thought I was the only one. And when I heard those words that you wrote, and so poetically wrote them, I realized that I wasn't alone, and that gave me the energy to push forward. I remember the first time listening to the audio version, running on the beach at this point in my life where I was making these courses, these software development courses, and I was like halfway through what I need to do, and I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I should just throw in the towel. And after I listened to it, I realized I was like, I'm not alone, and that, just knowing that I wasn't alone, that this was a common force that everyone was fighting against, that was life changing for me. So
Oh, that's really interesting, John. So yeah, and it was the other thing that I thought when I wrote it was this is only for writers. They're
mm,
the only ones facing the blank page. And then I was amazed that actors and photographers and entrepreneurs, people like you trying to put together a course or something like that. I thought, wow, they feel resistance too, but apparently they do.
Yeah, and I really loved, again with the book too, just how artistic, like how poetic it was. There's so many lines that stick, with me. Like one of the most impactful things, and I tell people all the time, is if you keep those huskies mushing, you'll eventually pull into gnome. And it's just such a good way. Like you could say the same thing in common terminology, but the way that vision that you have in your mind of that's what I love. I think the idea that because you're a fiction writer and then you wrote this nonfiction piece, is you're able to combine them in such a way that most nonfiction writers can't do.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks.
Yeah. So let's see. So maybe I think for the people that aren't really familiar with the War of Art, which, guys, you should definitely pick up that book. And then, as I said before, the link to Stephen's new book, which we'll talk about a little bit too as well, is in the description below. Just go ahead and click that and buy that. Trust me, you're gonna love it. But maybe just a little bit more about, like, for people that aren't familiar with the War of Art, what is kind of really the whole concept? What is uh, the thing that
Okay.
you're teaching in the War of Art?
Um, I'll sort of tell it to you in a sense of my own story.
Mm,
When I was like 23 or 24, I quit a job to write a novel. I thought, oh, a piece of cake, I'll just write a novel, no problem. And I got like 99% of the way through, and then I blew the whole thing up and blew my marriage up and my life up and everything. And what I and for the next 7 or 8 years, I was sort of running away from writing, going around the country, working crazy jobs, et cetera, et
yeah.
cetera. And and I realized at some point who the enemy was, and that the enemy was inside my head. And I kind of gave a name to it. I called it resistance with a capital R, because I felt like it was like, if you're a writer and you're sitting down in front of this in the morning
Yeah.
and there's a blank screen there, or I'm sure you, when you're organizing your courses and you don't know what's coming next, you can feel this negative force radiating off the keyboard or whatever it may be, the piano keyboard, whatever if you're a songwriter. And once I realized that there was this force and I could give a name to it, uh, that really helped me to get over it, you know. And I absolutely believe that this is a diabolical force that exists
Mhm.
in everyone's head, and nobody teaches you about this in school. Nobody warns you about it. I mean, when I was getting my ass kicked by this force for 7 or 8 years, I never knew it even existed. You know, it existed. Well, I would say the form that it takes, and I'm sure you'll back me up in this one, John, is it's a voice in your head. And the voice says to you, let's say you have a dream to do courses or to write a book or whatever it is, the voice will say to you something like, you you have the nerve to do this. Who do you think you are?
Right.
You've never done it. It's been done a million times before you. It's always been done better. Your ideas are so lame. They've all been done before, then much better than you could ever do them. And that sort of thing. It'll tell you you're a bum, you're a loser, you're too old, you're too young, you're too rich, you're too poor, you're too fat, you're too thin, whatever. And the other form it will take is just a form of pure fear. You'll just
Mhm.
be absolutely terrified to do whatever the thing is. And uh, and in addition to fear will come self doubt, procrastination, self-loathing, and the opposite side of that, which sounds kind of odd but is true, is arrogance. You'll think
Mm.
I'm too good to do this, or perfectionism is another classic form of resistance, that you'll work all day on one sentence or one and just waste the whole day like that. So, in other words, this force, resistance with a capital R, is this diabolical, very subtle, intelligent, unrelenting force that you have to kind of do. It's the dragon you have to slay every morning, and it never goes away. Never.
And that's such a critical point of it too. I think also that was one of the things that really changed in my head after reading your book, was that I thought that I could get to a point where I could rest, where I could be done. And then, like, hearing you talk about, waking up in the morning and getting ready to go hunt again and climbing up the thickets and going after the, and and stealing yourself for the next day, knowing you'd have to do it all over again. Those words, once I realized that concept, that I think that created a different expectation for me, because then I was like, okay, I don't have to just get through this and I'm done. I have to get through this. But then it's my role to live as a warrior, to fight every single day. And once I had understood that, everything became easier. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it does make a big difference just to understand that, it's like fitness. It's like going to the gym, right? Every morning you wake up, you don't want to go. It's like, oh God, let me just stay in bed. I really don't want to do this kind of thing, right? But
Yeah,
you once you do it, you have to find some mental way, willpower or whatever it is, trick yourself one way or another to do it. And then once you're in there and you're doing it, then everything's okay. It's just the initial sort of jumping into that frozen pool of water. That's the hard part. But it's always there every morning. It never goes away.
exactly. Now, what are some things, it's been a while since you wrote that book. If you could add to the book, if you could make an addendum, what are the things that now that are missing from the book about resistance that you've learned since you've written it?
Well,
Or
there's
are
more.
there? Yeah.
Actually there's been a lot. I mean, when I started I have a blog that is every Wednesday. It's called Writing Wednesdays. And when I started it, which was like 9 years ago, I thought each week is going to be like one more chapter that I
Hmm.
didn't write in the world of art. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do like 5 or 6 and I'll stop. But I've been doing it for 9 years, so there's a
Wow.
lot more things there. But the one thing I would say, the the most recent book that I've done on this subject is called The Artist's Journey. Are you aware of that, John? That book?
Yeah. I have not gone through that yet. I went through Do the Work, but I will definitely pick that up now.
Well, I'll save you the trouble. I'll give you the short version of it
Good.
right here.
Okay, I'll take it.
It's a
I'll
sort of
take it.
a really broader view of the whole kind of concept of being an artist, being a writer, being any sort of an entrepreneur or innovative person. I think that what I know you're familiar with the concept of the hero's journey. It's right, the quest that we all kind of go on. And I
Right.
think that, to me, in an artist's life, we go on our own sort of hero's journey, which I would analogize to what I was talking about in my 7 or 8 years, where you're running away from your calling, where you haven't found your calling yet, whatever it is. You're thrashing around, you're lost, you're depressed, and then at some point you actually find your calling and you say, ah, I'm finally going to face it. This is what I was meant to do. Then a new stage of your life comes in that I call the artist journey. And at that point, you really settle down and become a real pro. And the
Hmm.
question now becomes, the first part, the hero's journey, was really about discovering what your gift is. It may be music, it may be writing, it may be whatever, helping others. But then that second half of your life becomes the answering the question, what is my gift? What exactly was I put here to do? What is my calling? And if you were, like, once Bruce Springsteen decided that he was a musician, then his artist journey began. He
Hmm.
was no longer thrashing around in self-loathing or self-doubt. Now his questions became, how do I become a better musician? What's the first album? What's the next album? How do I find my voice? Who are my bandmates? How do I make this work as a professional? How do I make it pay? So that's one thing I would add, that over the course of a long life, even though you're constantly fighting resistance, at some point you do really find your calling, and you
Hmm.
do really become a professional at it, and you do settle down and produce your life's work.
That's interesting. I can definitely relate to that in the sense that of like being an entrepreneur. I remember for a
Yes.
long time, for me, I was making money online. In fact, I quit my job. I still didn't call myself an entrepreneur. I didn't feel like I was an entrepreneur. And then one morning I woke up and I said, I'm an entrepreneur. And you know what I mean?
John, do you remember, was there any event? Why did you suddenly, were you able to do that?
I don't know if there was any particular event. I think it was just there was enough data that my subconscious couldn't deny it
Uh-huh.
anymore, or it was just like, yes, you must be at this point. It's like, because I kept on giving myself obstacles and excuses as to why I'm not yet, why I'm not, well, you had a good year. you,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
you've only been quit your job for a year or two or whatever it was, or I mean, or maybe this won't work out and it'll fail, and then you're not really an entrepreneur. But after some amount of evidence, it became the thing. And then
Ah,
once I took on that identity and role, then it changed everything.
I can absolutely relate to that, and I can tell you that a lot of other people who are artists do, because like for years and years, I could not call myself a writer. I
Mm,
said, I'm trying to be one. I'm an aspiring one, but I'm not one. I can't, just like you said, maybe I got lucky, but it's going to go away or whatever. And finally, I think just the accumulation of weight, reached a tipping point. And I said, okay, I guess I am a writer. And you're right. Once you reach that point, then you really don't look back.
yeah, yeah. That preponderance of evidence, I guess that's a
Yeah, yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, yeah.
so then okay, so one question that I've kind of always wondered too is because one of the things that you said in the War of Art was talking about like being a hack. That section hit me a little bit because I was like, gosh, am I a hack? I mean, it's like, because there's like this battle between the artist and the entrepreneur, right? The artist wants to create, the entrepreneur wants to make money, and it's like sometimes I'm like, which side is winning today?
Yeah, yeah.
And am I really being true to the form? uh, what's your kind of thoughts on that? Because I think that's a struggle that a lot of guys have. Is it's like, I want to create my art, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm creating the art that's going to actually be marketable.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I
Yeah,
actually, do you know who Robert McKee is? Does that ring a bell?
it sounds very familiar.
He's a teacher of screenwriting. He's kind of a famous
Okay.
kind of guru and mentor, and I got this from him. He's his definition of a hack.
Mm,
And a hack is somebody that um, absolutely caters to a market,
mm.
and in the sense of playing them for suckers,
Okay. Okay.
and um, and now, on the other hand, it is tough to, because if you're a writer, if you're doing courses or whatever, you do have a market. You got to make a living. You got to put
Yeah.
something out there that somebody's going to want, and it's sometimes a tough call. If I do my own totally pure thing, will anybody want it? And like in the movie business, they have a thing where it says one for love, one for money. Have you ever heard that one?
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
we'll do one movie for love, and then we'll make some, and then we'll do another one for money. And so when you're doing the one for money, that's when you're a hack. You know,
Right.
but I do think there is a way to do both. There is a way. If I think if you're, this is going to kind of sound airy fairy, but I think if you're writing or you're doing something, a course or whatever, that's pure from your heart, it will find an audience. There is an audience out there. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm deluding myself when I say that, but I certainly think if you mess around, is it okay to swear on your
Oh
program?
yeah. Yeah. You can definitely swear. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
if you fuck around long enough being a hack, you're going to be stuck being a hack, and you'll never be able to come back. It is a form of prostitution, right?
Right.
Just to do something just for the money that your heart isn't in. But yeah, it's a great question, John.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better because I was wondering, and I try to, like, and sometimes I'm like, well, a lot of people hate me, so I can't be a hack, right? It's
That's
like,
a pretty good measure. When they hate you, I think that's a good sign. Yeah.
yeah. So, uh, so transitioning into kind of talking a little bit about actually, I want to get to one question real quick here, which uh, Lake Crystal said, "What do you do when you have writer's block?" I know you had that Somerset Ma quote in there.
Uh, I'm a believer that there is no such thing as writer's block.
Yep.
That what I call resistance, that's writer's block. That
Right.
that's there all the time. There's never a day when it's not there. And if you're a professional, you just sort of work your way through that. Now, the Somerset Maugham quote is a great quote. It's in the War of Art, and someone asked Somerset Maugham, a great writer, if he wrote on a schedule or only when inspiration struck him. And he said, I write only when inspiration strikes me. He said, fortunately, it strikes me every morning at 9:30 sharp.
Exactly.
In other words, he was a pro. He
Yeah.
wasn't going to sit around and wait for the Muse to show up. He was going to sit down and just start working, and hoping that the Muse would see him and approve of him and give him some good ideas. But when you have writer's block, it's just that's an everyday occurrence. That's what resistance is. The name of the game is to break through it.
Yeah. Yeah, when I do like little essays on my Instagram posts every day, and when I have a writer's block there, I always write about writer's block.
That's a good way to do it. Yeah.
I say I don't have anything to say today, so I'm going to
Yeah.
write about what you do when you don't have anything to
Yeah.
say, and then there you go.
Yeah.
It's like go meta.
Whatever works. What you're really doing, John, is you're just trying to get some traction, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
trying to get the locomotive pulling that 100-car freight train, just get the wheels rolling just a little bit. And once you get them rolling, then they start rolling a little easier and a little easier, and then you're really rolling.
exactly. Yeah. So transitioning a little bit into the new book, the Man at Arms. What I was curious as I read this book, because I didn't, from all your other writings, I hadn't take you as a very religious type. And
Ah,
then this book is very centered on Christianity. And so what inspired you to write this? Did you write this from a theological viewpoint, like a personal theological viewpoint? Did you write this from a purely, historical fiction curiosity viewpoint? What was the thing that inspired
uh,
you to write this
no, I
particular book?
definitely did not write it from a religious point of view. I didn't, and it's kind of funny because people who read early copies kind of are playing that back to me, and it's
Mm,
kind of surprised me. I wrote it like as a pure adventure story, you
mm,
know, and but the thing about any novel or any movie is there's always a hero, right? And the
right.
hero, the story is always about the hero changing one way or another. The hero starts. I remember I was working on the original Total Recall once with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the first version of it, and
Okay.
somehow he was talking somewhere one night, and somebody asked him how do you pick a part? Pick a part that you're going to play. Not that I think Arnold Schwarzenegger is the greatest actor that ever came down the pike, but he is an interesting guy. And he said, I pick something that goes from A to Z. It's got to change. The character has
Mm,
got to change. So my lead character in The Man at Arms is the solitary mercenary, a one-man killing machine, Telemon of Arcadia in the ancient world. And I knew that I wanted to have him really change. That he was at a certain point of being a warrior, that he had taken it as far as it could go, and he
yeah.
needed. And so one of the concepts in storytelling that I believe in, and in real life too, is that when anybody changes in the real sense, that change happens on the soul level,
Yeah.
SOUL. It doesn't happen on the behavioral level, although it does reflect there. But so when something is going to change on the soul level, it becomes spiritual. It's about some kind of change that you could call spiritual. Usually it is a character who is self-centered at the start of the story, and by the end of the story is willing to give his life for a greater cause or give something for another person out of love or something like that. So, and it just happened that the story was set in the post-Christian era, a few years after the crucifixion in
Right.
Jerusalem, in Judea, with the Romans as the bad guys, and this one character, Telamon, standing up against them. So, but no, I did not intend it to be, a religious thing at all. But it did come out that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting story. Like thinking about those times and just like I like the way that you painted the picture. I was like, oh wow, I never I heard read the Bible and read these, but I never really thought about what it would actually be like in that time. So like to transport yourself into that time, and then and then I love the character just that that he worships the god the strife, the god strife. That it's such an interesting, such a stoic kind of thing. It reminded me of Hercules, like the stoic story of Hercules and his choice between the essentially the pleasurable good life with no problems and the hard road with basically glory but strife. And it's like Telamon is that to me. I was reminded of that same character that makes that choice.
Yeah. I mean, the story was if he's kind of the archetypal warrior, which he is,
Mm,
in my mind, he was like a gunslinger, like a Clint Eastwood man with no name in the speech, or a samurai, you know, a solitary warrior who had taken that identity to its extreme. And so for him, the idea that the only goddess he revered is the goddess of strife is a very dark way of looking at the world, you know,
mm,
where he says everything is born in strife and everything is expires in strife. And usually in a story like a Western or a samurai movie, when you have a character like that, that's kind of a one man killing machine, what happens is they encounter a vulnerable person. And in
mm,
this case, it's this young girl, Ruth, this who's 9 years old, a feral mute girl, and and the bond that develops between them, a reluctant bond at first, is what changes him, and
yeah,
that's when the sort of the soul concept and the idea of love and the idea of sacrificing for another person, you know, or for a greater cause enters the equation. So I do not. I'm not a a practitioner of that strife is a great thing. That
right.
was really to indicate that he was at a dead end. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting transformation, and like that, just that, that love, my firm belief is that like a man's greatest gift to the world is love, right? And it's something that masculinity generally, like, people don't agree with, but I really like that ending surprised me, that ended up becoming the thing. And that's so powerful, because it's like the man, the male role of the protector, of protecting, of and being brought out by the vulnerability, that re-emphasizes that role, and makes it stronger, is such a powerful concept. It gave me chills at the end
Ah,
of the book.
you
So
know, it's um, my girlfriend Diana that you just met before we went on the air. We've been binge watching Game of Thrones.
okay, yeah,
You know, in fact, we watched it three times through, and there's one scene in it where Jamie Lannister knights the female character Brienne of Tarth. I don't know if you remember this, but when what he does, it's the classic sort of knighting ceremony with the sword on the shoulder, and what he does is he says he puts on one shoulder. He says, you know, may the warrior make you brave, and may the mother teach you justice, or no, may the mother teach you or help aid you to protect the innocent.
mm,
And that's the sort of, you were talking about masculinity before we went on the air. And
right,
I think that's it's not so hard for a man to just be a fighter of other men, you know,
right,
to just be stuck in a warrior archetype, but to become a protector of the weak. Now you add, or of course, that's becoming a father, having children and having a wife and taking care of them. But it's also like the big breakthrough for King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The whole concept was that they would defend the weak, you know, that they were not
right,
just ass kicking guys that had armor, you know, and could, you know, kill you, but that they would look out for those who were vulnerable. And that's when I think you take masculinity to a higher, much higher level, to a whole soul level. And one of the things that's going on in the country today, the tribalism that's happening, I
mm.
think, is we have not turned the corner to that looking out for the vulnerable side. You know, it's just straight ahead toxic masculinity. But don't get me started on that.
Well, so another thing, that I was curious about too is, and again, in writing this book, which, guys, I'm just going to keep on telling you, click the link below. You'll have some. There's some parts in this book where, like I said, some things that I had to Google. I was like, Roman torture. I was like, wow. There's some interesting parts, but definitely check out the book. But with the historical fiction, I remember, Gates of Fire was also just a phenomenal book, just that I listened to multiple times, and you just paint such a vivid picture of that time. How do you do it? What do you do to research, to make sure that you're accurate, to kind of paint that picture? Because, again, when I was reading Man at Arms too, I was like, how can you know so much stuff about this this time period? Like, where is this information out there? What's kind of your process to do this research? Are you just always immersed in history? Is it something specifically, like when you say, okay, I'm going to look at this time segment, that you spend a huge amount of time researching? What's
Well,
your process?
I'll give away a little secret, John. Here, a lot of times when the details that you come up with in historical fiction, you're making them up. You
Mm,
know, uh, or rather, you're kind of imagining yourself back into that world
okay.
and asking yourself, what would I see if I were here right now? What would actually happen? Um, and just as a small example, in one of my books I was writing about a battle that Alexander the Great fought, and it was the moments before the battle when the armies were on each other's on could see each other across the field, and I'm just sort of imagining that, and I'm describing it in the book, and I started to talk about that dogs would appear at this point, and that you'd look out across the battlefield, and there'd be a bunch of like neighborhood dogs, which
Huh.
just kind of come running out, just drawn by curiosity and seeing what was going on. And I thought, I never read that in a book, but I will bet you $1,000,000 that if you were back there, that's exactly what would happen.
Yeah.
And so you sort of, you research as much as you can. Like this book, A Man at Arms, is set in Jerusalem and it's set in the Sinai Desert, the wilderness of Sinai. And I was there. I was researching another book called The Lion's Gate, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I was in Israel for like 9 weeks, and I went to these places. So I had that in my mind. I knew what they looked like. I knew what the feeling was like, and in addition to reading books about it. And then again, you just try to imagine yourself back, and whatever the details are, get those in there. Another thing, maybe I'm talking too much about the technique of writing here,
No,
but
no, this is all good.
but
Yeah.
um, I had a career of about 10 years as a screenwriter. And when you're thinking in movies are pictures, right?
Right.
So a lot of times we'll be watching a movie, and let's say it's a detective is entering an apartment where somebody has been murdered, right? And we're watching the scene, and we're thinking, oh, how interesting, there's a desk over there, there's a window over there. None of that is by accident. That's the thing that you really learn in the movies.
Okay.
Everything is thought out in advance. Everything is thought, exactly what the desk is going to look like, what the light's going to be look like coming through the windows, and so on and so forth. And so that the director is really painting the story with those details. So and he's trying to, or she is trying to create a mood, trying to be scary, the music cues that might come in. And so as a writer, all you have is a blank page and words. But with those words, you can, with enough detail, you want to know. I always try to think of it like a movie. And if I'm looking through a character's eyes, it's like, what do they see? What's on the right? What's on the left? What's the weather like? How cold is it? Is somebody after them? Or, how close are the bad guys to them? That kind of thing. So, for sure, my aim is to make you, John, as you're reading it, feel like you're there, that you can see
Exactly.
it and you're immersed in it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely get that sense from reading the book. Now, let's see. We got a question. Oh, here's a good one from Maria. She says, Stephen, who has been your favorite character to write?
It's actually the character in A Man at Arms, this
Okay.
Telemon of Arcadia. Um, and why is he my favorite is the next question, right? I'm sure. I mean, some characters are just close to your heart, You
Mm,
just sort of feel like maybe they're an alter ego for you or something like that, or you're fascinated by them. Like this character is the only recurring character in my books. He's in 3 other books of mine, and he's always been a minor character. And I've always wanted to write a book where I could just focus on him alone, because when he first appeared in an earlier book of mine, Tides of War, he appeared fully formed. It wasn't like I planned him. He just sort of materialized on the page, and he had a fully formed philosophy. We were talking about before about he worships the goddess strife, and I thought I was just fascinated by his philosophy, even though I didn't know what it was. There was this
right.
character who has a philosophy, but writing, creativity is a strange thing. So he's been a guy that, like, if I could have dinner with him, if I could meet him, if I could follow him
Yeah.
around, I would love to do that.
I love the way that you said that because it's almost like you don't even know your own character, because you're like discovering him as you're right. Like it's almost like
Yeah.
you wrote it to find out more about who he is, and that's such an interesting concept. I love that. That's just thinking about that. Like even just you said like you'd love to have dinner with him. So that's yeah, that's an interesting way to look at things. It makes it a lot more real. Yeah, when you see him as real, you know what I mean. I think that's
I mean, I
that's pretty
do
cool.
believe that like I believe that songs exist
Mhm.
before Bruce Springsteen writes them, you know,
Yeah.
and novels and movies exist before Ridley Scott directs them. So when a character materializes on a page, it's some mysterious way, it's a dimensions are talking to each other, and that character exists already. You, the writer, you may think you're inventing him, but you're not. He's appearing or she's appearing, with her own energy, her own aura, her own, whatever it is. And a lot of times that's the fun of writing, is that you're kind of meeting people that are, and they're all aspects of you. It's like characters in a dream. Like they say, when you have a dream, every character in a dream is you, is a form of you. Um, so that's why it's kind of so fascinating to get to know these characters that just appear on a page for you.
Yeah, yeah, that was kind of a controversial part of the war of art, but I feel that I agree with that as well. In just I think Carl Jung had this idea of synchronicities, like effects without causes, and the only explanation for that is that it has to come from another reality outside of this reality, and that that makes sense. Like the things that I see in life and the unexplained coincidences, the idea that everything happens for a reason, it all kind of feeds into that idea, which I mean some people will say is mystical, but i I believe it as
I'm a
well.
big fan
So
of mystical, but tell me a little bit more, because I've never really quite understood, John, exactly what synchronicity is. How would you define it?
yeah, so basically effects without causes. So everything like within our material world, we have some cause produces some effect,
Uh-huh.
whereas there's these things that happen that don't make any sense, but they have to be connected in some way. So
Ah,
like an example I have is, it's crazy, I went to Boise, Idaho to give a keynote speech at my old college there, and I knew when I got there that I was going to run into one of my old friends, Brian, who I used to work with. Never talked to him, didn't say I was going to go to Boise, but I just knew it. I knew it
ah,
was going to happen. Like, strangest thing. And I was running one of my 10-mile runs in the morning on the green belt there. And I knew I was going to talk to him today. And this car pulls up next to me when I'm running, and there he is. And
wow.
I wasn't surprised to see him, but he was surprised to see me because he had no idea I was there. And out of, there's like 400, 500,000 people in that city. But to me, that was a synchronicity because there was something that happened outside of this material world that caused those events to
Ah.
to connect to
So you
happen.
believe that there was some causality, but it just was on some other dimension, or it was something we couldn't see or hear or touch. Is that how
Exactly.
it works? Uh-huh. So it's
Yeah.
a little bit like fate or destiny or crazy accidents. Well, I believe in that. That's for sure.
Yeah. I kind of think that the whole world is like a puppet show, like a
Yeah,
puppet theater, and there's some hand
yeah,
that it belongs to the same entity that's controlling both of the puppets.
yeah. I
you
agree.
know,
It's like, why do you fall in love with a certain person and not
right.
not others? There's got to be some kind of link somewhere that, this the sense that you've seen them before, you've known them before, whatever. And the
Exactly.
weird thing, a lot of times, of course, is it's mutual. The other person has that
Yeah.
same feeling toward you. It's like, how does that happen?
Right. Yeah, even what you're saying, there's be some people that are watching this that will know this is a synchronicity in
Yeah,
itself
yeah,
just by you saying that because they had those exact same thoughts just a few minutes ago. And so yeah, it's crazy how that works. And even just when you meet people and then that you've known them for a long time, like you instantly connect. And yeah, and but it's mutual, like
yeah,
you said. That's the weird part, is that it's mutual. That's
yeah. That
the
is
thing
the
that
weird
tells you.
part. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. We've got Let's see. Heliocene says, "Hey, what's up, man? Good to see you, buddy of mine." He says, "Great to see this interview. Read The War of Art for the first time last year after hearing you rave about it for so long. Everyone needs to read Stephen Pressfield's work. Awesome. Agree." Let's see.
Thank you. Yes.
Let's see. So I want to see if you guys have some questions as well. Definitely put them in here. I know one that I wanted to ask you about was in terms of writing, of doing the thing. One of the biggest things that I try to help guys with, young guys especially, that's they struggle with, is finding, I guess what you said is like their art, or like finding the path, because today there's so many. I mean, you're definitely old enough. I'm old enough to remember time before there was the internet, before there was a multitude of options. You know what I mean?
Or there was an internet.
I feel like life was actually better than in many ways.
I think it was, yeah.
But now, there's so many options. So many guys have so many options. How do they pick a path in life? How do they, I get so many guys that are like, I don't want to pick the wrong path. What's kind of the advice that you have for that?
I mean, there is such a thing as the hero's journey, right? That we've I'll for those of us that aren't familiar, let me give it to you very quickly. And I'm sure you're into this, John, yourself.
Yeah.
Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, contemporary Freud and everything like that, he believed that we come into this world not with a blank slate as a psyche, but that there's kind of software in that psyche. And one of the pieces of software is what he called the hero's journey. And that Joseph Campbell, there's a great thing. Read anything by Joseph Campbell, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, or there's a wonderful PBS series with Bill Moyers called The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell. Anyway, the hero's journey is this sort of, it's kind of it takes the form of a story, and it's sort of like software inside us, and it kind of compels us to live it out. Like the classic hero's journey in our era is Star Wars, and in fact, George Lucas worked with Joseph Campbell but Luke Skywalker starts out, he's on he's working on an Uncle Owen and Aunt Farou's evaporator farm, and then he connects with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He goes on this whole long adventure, and he just blows up the Death Star. And that was sort of the classic hero's journey. And all of us kind of have that software in our heads, and it will kick in and call us. We'll be in a world sort of like Luke's world, a boring world where we're stuck, and some sort of thing in the hero's journey, that it's called the call.
Yeah.
And something will come to us. It might come to us in a dream. It might come to us in real life. We might fall in love with somebody and they say, I'm leaving for Argentina tomorrow. Come with me, and we respond to the call, and then we live out a journey. And eventually in the end, we come back home and we've changed, we've become who we were meant to be. And so what I would say to anybody young is that that's wrestling with this, is that you've got that hero's journey too. And you're probably on it already. And just to have faith in it, that you will get the call, or you've already got it, and your journey will play out. You're not going to get away from it. It's going to happen. And I forgot what I was just going to say, but I would just say that have faith in that journey, that it's in there, and that I had a friend who I used to work for as a boss of mine. And he used to say that people always tell you that life is short, but really life is long. He says, we live many lifetimes in this one lifetime. And he said to anybody young that's struggling or in doubt, he would say, you've got 1,000,000 years ahead of you. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. It's all going to unfold. Keep your eyes open. And what I meant to say is that the hero's journey in all of our lives is always enacted in a benighted state, meaning we're always blind. We don't know what's happening. It's not like we know what's happening and we can guide ourselves. The definition of the hero's journey is that we're lost and we're stumbling, and we're in a strange inverted world. And so if you feel that way. And I would say this to myself if I could talk to my younger self, just go with it. It's okay. You know,
Yeah.
it will reveal itself.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, especially the comparing to the hero's journey. And I kind of think about the ideas that like that you can't make a mistake. Like
Yeah,
I
I
kind of
think that's true. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it has to be like because all mistakes or like all failures are either a result of a lack of knowledge or a lack of discipline, and you can only gain those things by the failure.
Yeah. I
So
mean, it's easy to say from the outside. When you're actually living it, it's hell, you know?
yeah,
But but it is true that sort of life who was that? I think it was Joe Walsh said this of the Eagles that when you're living life forward, you're lost all the time. You don't know where you're going. But if you look back, it all sort of falls into place. You go, oh my God, everything was meant to be. I was meant to, you know, fall off the cliff there or whatever.
yeah, exactly. Let's see. We've got Ledbetter says initiation, separation, return can confirm synchronicity is real. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Kenton.
the hero's journey in 3 words. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Mo wants to know, Stephen, what is your daily routine? What does your daily routine look like?
Um, you know, when I was talking before about the hero's journey and then the artist journey, and like once you're on the artist journey, which I've been on for quite a few years now, you're basically about your craft, you know, and about doing, you know, like if I'm on in the middle of a book, it's a 2 year project. That's my mindset. So
Right.
my whole day is built around how can I serve that project. So I'm a very early riser. COVID has changed things a little bit here, but I would go to the gym really early. Now I go out on the deck, you
Yeah.
know, with Diana and we do our little workout, whatever it is there. But I definitely would go to the gym first thing and try to work out hard because I'm kind of rehearsing for coming home and sitting down at the typewriter or at the keyboard. And
Right.
I know that I'm going to face resistance there. So my time at the gym is a kind of rehearsal for that. You know, I'm doing something that's hard. I'm doing something that hurts, and I'm doing something that I don't want to do, but that I know once I've done it, I'll feel great about it. So I'm trying to establish that, and I'll come home and take care of a little correspondence, and then I'll just sit down to work. And maybe 3 hours or 4 hours. That's about as much as I can do
Yeah.
before I'm too tired. And when I start making mistakes is when I stop.
Yeah.
When I start making typos, because I know I'm at the point of diminishing returns, just like in a workout, right? You hit the point where if I do one more squat, I'm going to collapse. Um, and then once the working day is over, I definitely say to myself, the office is closed, and I
Mm.
turn off. I don't obsess. I leave it to the muse to work on it overnight. I let the well fill up again, as John Steinbeck used to say. Let the well fill up again overnight, and then and the last thing I do, like I know you know this, John, from reading War of Art, is I start preparing myself for the next day.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you do the exact same thing because I know first thing in the morning I wake up, I'm going to hit resistance again. So
Yeah.
I'm preparing myself to be ready for it and steeling myself to get some momentum going and face it during the day.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I always think of like trying to I having this war with my future self who is going to attempt to sabotage me, and so
Ah.
I'm going to try and outsmart my future self.
Of
You know.
course, your future self could also be working for you and trying to pull you forward. Maybe there's two future selves.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Feed the good one, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then, the other thing that I was really curious about with your uh with your writing, because in the War of Art, you had talked about how you had gone for a long time without very much success. How do you carry through that? I help a lot of guys starting up, let's say like a YouTube channel, for example. And I try to warn them. I'm like, the first year you're going to make a bunch of videos. No one's going to watch them. Like your mom might watch them. That's
Yeah.
it. Or maybe even the second year. It
Maybe
might take like till year 3. Like, and there's still no
even
guarantee.
your mom won't watch them.
Yeah, exactly. Then she's
Yeah.
tired of it. But, uh, how did you have the faith? What pushed you through to keep on going? And how does someone do that, not getting results, not seeing the results?
Um, for me, I mean, it actually took me 28 years from the time I quit my job and started to write until I got a novel published. Um, so there's sort of two answers to how I kept going, which I don't even know how I did. But one was that I just didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Anytime I would try to do something else to get a straight job, or no matter how hard I tried, sooner or later I just couldn't do it. The only thing that would keep me from being depressed was to try to keep writing, even though I was failing, 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 failing. And the other thing was that along the way, along those long years, I did have some success here and there. It might not have been in my exact field, what I wanted to
Mm.
do, but like I say, I had a 10-year career as a screenwriter. And that wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it was in the field, I was learning my craft. And so that encouraged me. I kept thinking, I'm getting better. I'm making a little bit of progress. I'm better than I was a year ago. And, who knows what will happen. So I think it's a combination of not having a plan B,
Yeah.
which you can't really force yourself. You do or you don't, and getting some little successes along the way to enough to encourage you and keep you going.
And what keeps you going now? Because I mean, you probably don't have to write anymore. You've got royalties from a lot of books that are coming in. You've written a lot of really great books. What keeps you going at this point?
Well, if I were to stop right now, stop
Mm,
writing, I would become, but within 2 days, I would be very, very irritable. I would be no fun to be around.
yeah.
And I was become increasingly depressed. And pretty soon I started, getting up and, I'd start acting out, doing bad stuff. So I'm just sort of compelled to do it for whatever reason. And I know that I'm going to do it. They'll have to take me out feet first. It's, but I also believe I sort of work, and I think any writer does, from project to project, right?
Yeah.
If I have an idea for a book, I'm working on that, and I'm constantly looking for what's the next idea. Like Bruce Springsteen, I keep referring to him. He goes from album to album, right?
Right.
What is Nebraska? What's the Ghost of Tom Joad? What's the next one going to be? Springsteen on Broadway, whatever. And I'm a believer in the muse. I believe in inspiration. I believe we're called to do something. So I always kind of have another assignment coming in that I'm going to do. And when that stops, if that ever stops, I don't know what I'm going to do. That's going to be a whole
Yeah.
other thing.
Okay. Yeah. It sounds like maybe you've tried to stop before and experienced that.
Yeah, but not for very long. It's too
Yeah.
depressing.
Yeah, yeah, it was funny and interesting. I had this point in my life where around 33 where I retired, I had left the corporate world. I went to go
Uh-huh.
live in Maui on the beach for 2 months. I was going to sip Mai Tais and just
Uh-huh.
live on the beach. And it's the most miserable I'd ever been in my entire life. I had achieved the thing I had wanted my whole life, most miserable ever. Went back home and got to work, you
Ah,
know. But
it's a very typical story. I
yeah,
can see it completely. The human being I've is built for adversity. We are not built for comfort and ease. Whether it's evolution through all the caveman days, we had to go out and beat, a mastodon over the head with a rock, to get dinner, or whatever it is, we're made for adversity. And if we have to provide it for ourselves artificially,
right.
then we should do that. Run an Ironman, do whatever it takes. But we're happiest when we're struggling against a form of resistance. And when
It,
you're on the
it,
beach in Maui, that's death.
Yeah, it took me a long time to figure that out because I struggled back and forth. I tried to like quit multiple times and not do anything, and because I thought I was too high strung. I thought I like there's something wrong with you, John, because you just have to keep on going all the time. You need to just learn how to relax. And I tried it, and I was miserable and unhappy. And then I finally, in the last maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years, I accepted that I have to be pushing the limits. I have to run marathons and I have to be writing or creating videos, or I have to be going at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's the same thing for me.
Yeah.
It's weird because we're told advertisements, commercials, popular culture tell us, oh, the ideal thing is to be on the beach in Maui sipping a Mai Tai, right?
Right.
That's they show it in a million commercials, right? Sandals or whatever the hell it is, But once you get there, the first, couple of hours, maybe it's okay. But after a while, after a few days, it becomes hell.
The other thing that that kind of reminds me of this is another really salient point from the War of Art, like a visual image that I have in my mind all the time, is the part where you talk about the guy. I forget the exact description. You know, in his convertible with a stogie
Oh, right.
license plate. You know, it says dues paid, and I tell all my coaching clients that is like, you got to pay your dues. Where did that inspiration come from? uh just kind of your thoughts on that,
I really
on
saw
paying your
that
dues.
guy. I really saw that
Yeah, okay,
guy,
yeah.
And it just was so funny. This fat guy with his cigar in a Cadillac, his license plate said dues paid. And,
Yeah,
you know, although I would say I've never reached the point where I feel like my dues are paid. And I don't think you will either, John,
yeah,
but there certainly are dues to be paid.
yeah.
The culture today is the culture of instant success,
Hmm.
instant gratification. Do a video, it goes viral, suddenly your problems are over. And of course, that's not true. I mean, we were talking about the hero's journey software that's in us.
Yeah,
That's commanding us to face adversity. And when you were on the beach with the Mai Tais, that software was ticking under the surface, and it was making you want to get back. And so I think what we do have to pay our dues before we can turn the corner and get into what I would call, like I say, the artist journey.
definitely, 100%. All right, guys. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. We're just coming up on the hour here, so definitely want to say one more time, guys. Help sell some copies. Go check out the link down below, and you can pre-order a Man at Arms. What's the exact release date on the book?
I think it's Tuesday, next Tuesday, the second. Yeah, 2nd of
Okay,
March. Yeah.
so Bulldogs, help us out here. Get a copy of the book. Go do it. It will help. As an author myself on books, I know that Amazon ranking is so critical, and that you want to have as high ranking as possible on launch day. So help. Stephen, if you've enjoyed his work, if you've enjoyed this interview, do a little favor and just take the time to go get the book, which you're going to enjoy
You might even
anyway.
like the book. It's a
Exactly, exactly. You might. It's a really good book. I read, like I said, I couldn't put it down when I was reading through it, and and all of Stephen's work is great. If you haven't read War of Art, highly recommend it. Gates of Fire, classic book that's recommended by so many like history professors and everything, because it's such a great book. And I think you guys will love that as well. And there's audio versions as well, which is what I do. I tend to be an audio person because I'm always going for, or at least I was going for runs all the time. But so thanks for coming on, Stephen. Any parting words you want to give to the Bulldog Mindset audience here?
I will. I do have a parting word here.
Yeah,
And first, John, thanks very much for having me on. This was great fun. You asked some great questions, and I'm happy to come back anytime you want.
awesome.
So put me on the list somewhere. But if somebody was going to ask me, like, for one thing, if you're a young guy or gal and you're sort of struggling or trying to find your calling, I would say, and this might sound crazy, pay attention to your dreams.
Hmm.
keep keep a you know Learn to remember your dreams. There's a wonderful book. I'm going to recommend a book here. It's called Inner Work by Robert Johnson, and who's a great Jungian therapist. And it's about interpreting dreams. And I really do believe that in our soul, and that's what's talking to us when a dream comes, is a source of wisdom that's way beyond anything we have up here, And when we're lost, I know I can look back at various points in my life where a dream has come at exactly the right time and kind of told me something that kept me going or pointed me in one direction or pointed me away from another thing. And I've heard a lot of other people that I've talked to and that I know say the same thing. I would not dismiss dreams. It's a real skill, I keep, at my bedside, I keep a little, tape recorder, but everybody else has got an iPhone or something like that because you forget your dreams. But I would say pay attention to your dreams because, and in my darkest hours, that was when dreams were really vivid and they were really coming to me. And absolutely, I'm convinced it was my unconscious or my soul trying to rescue me, trying to
Right.
give me advice. And I do think it's pretty much infallible what it will tell you. So that would be my one last thought. Pay attention to your dreams.
Now, I actually have a question about that because I can never remember my dreams. Is there something technique,
Here's the
something
well,
to
this is absolutely true, John. I mean, I'm the
okay.
same way. Dream for
Mhm.
whatever it is, dreams evaporate. That's why I think you absolutely have to train yourself to
Oh,
get out your phone or whatever it is in that moment. We always say to ourselves, "Oh, there's no way I'll forget this. This is
mm,
so vivid." And then like 2 minutes later, it's completely gone. You don't even know what it was. So you do have to sort of train yourself in those moments. Roll over, grab your iPhone, dictate just enough that you'll remember it in the morning. But that's a skill that you sort of have to teach yourself to. And if you think about, the in the primitive man or whatever it is, the shaman,
yeah.
that was his skill to to access the unconscious and to pay attention to those to dreams. So it's a really important thing, I think.
Yeah, yeah, good advice. I'm gonna have to really take that into account now because I've never really like I've heard it before and I've never actually taken action on it, but I'm gonna get a journal or something and put it by my
Yeah,
bed so that
and
I
read that
actually
book,
do this
Robert Johnson's Inner Work. It's
inner
a very
work.
short book. It's like the War of Art.
Robert, okay, Robert Johnson.
Yep.
Actually, I'm gonna actually one more question here because that was one I was gonna ask you. I'd love to ask
Okay.
this question. Is what books do you recommend?
Um, what can you give me
Yeah.
a
Okay.
for fun or for what?
I would say just like books that everyone should read that will greatly impact your life or that you feel are kind of the more profound books that really impact your life will have a
Okay,
big
I'm gonna
impact.
just throw one at you for whatever
Okay.
this
Yeah.
came out of plucked from where the sun don't shine. Uh, there's it's a Penguin paperback,
Okay.
and it's called The Last Days of Socrates.
Oh, okay.
And I know this sounds like a strange thing to read, but it's about death. And what it is Plato was Socrates' disciple, and he wrote a bunch of dialogues that were sort of that are almost read like plays. It's like a person A says something, person B says something about Socrates. And when, as we know from Socrates, uh, he was convicted by the citizens of Athens and sentenced to death, right?
Right.
To take the hemlock and die. And so Plato was there with him in the prison cell. His friends were allowed to visit. And so it's actually almost like we had a video camera there with one of the great philosophers of the greatest of all time on the
Yeah.
point of his own death and what he said, what he thought about this, what it all meant, what his life meant, what death meant. And it's just a great, I think it's great. Maybe people will be bored. I don't know. But it's a short book, The Last Days of Socrates. It's by Plato in the Penguin Classics.
Okay. I will check that out. I've read Plato's Republic and
This is much better than the Republic. This is it's almost like I say, a video. It's like you are there, a little documentary type of thing.
okay, awesome. I will definitely check that out. Well, thank you again, Stephen, for being here. I mean, it's still unbelievable to me, considering having
Well, thanks
really,
for having me, John. It's great
yeah.
to be here with the Bulldog mindset.
All
And
right,
anytime
and
you want to do it again, I'm game to do it.
well, I definitely will take you up on that. All
All
right,
right.
take
Have
care,
a good
Stephen.
one down there in
Yeah.
Pacific Beach. I salute you. Thanks a
All
lot for
right.
having me.
Bye.